"I'm sorry, sir, but this section is reserved for family and distinguished guests only. Your name isn't on the list," the usher, a young man in a sober suit, said with polite but firm finality. Arthur Pendleton, 85, stood at the entrance to the chapel, clutching a single perfectly white rose. His old dark suit, though clean and pressed, was clearly out of place amidst the sea of crisp dress uniforms and expensive civilian attire. "But, General Harrison," Arthur murmured, his voice thick with unshed tears. The usher just shook his head. "I'm sure he was, sir, but rules are rules." Moments later, as Arthur sat dejectedly on a bench outside, a familiar, powerful voice cut through the solemn pre-service murmur from the chapel's PA system, a voice that made the entire congregation freeze. "There seems to be a hero among us who has been turned away. If you believe true brotherhood transcends rank and guest lists, type honor below. Arthur Pendleton carried the weight of 85 years and countless unspoken memories. His life had been one of quiet service, first as a young infantryman in the brutal campaigns of Korea, then through a long, distinguished but largely unheralded career in Army intelligence, specializing in signals and cryptography during the Cold War and beyond. He wasn't a man for parades or public accolades. His contributions were a closely guarded secret, his valor recorded only in classified files, and the hearts of the few who truly knew the risks he'd taken. General Marcus Iron Mike Harrison had been one of those few. They had met as young lieutenants, in the mud of some forgotten forward operating base, forging a bond that transcended rank and decades. Harrison had gone on to a storied public career, culminating in 4 stars in command of entire theaters. Arthur had remained in the shadows, his work equally vital, but far less visible. Now General Harrison was gone, and Arthur had traveled 3 states by train, his old suit carefully brushed, the single white rose, Harrison's favorite, clutched in his slightly trembling hand to pay his final respects at the full military honors funeral being held at the National Cathedral. He wasn't seeking recognition, only a quiet moment to say goodbye to a friend, a brother in arms. The cathedral was a hive of solemn activity. Dignitaries, high-ranking officers from all branches, grieving family members, and a phalanx of protocol officers and ushers moved with practiced precision. The air was thick with hushed reverence and the scent of lilies. Arthur, feeling small and out of place in his well-worn but undeniably civilian suit, approached the main entrance to the chapel where the service was to be held. An impeccably dressed young usher, clipboard in hand, stood guard, vetting attendees. "Good morning, sir," the usher said, his tone professionally courteous, but his eyes quickly assessing Arthur's attire, which clearly didn't match the glittering array of uniforms or the expensive tailoring of the other civilian guests. "May I see your invitation or credentials for the reserved seating?" Arthur hadn't received a formal invitation. He'd come as a private citizen, an old friend. I don't have an invitation," Arthur admitted quietly. "I'm here for General Harrison. He was a dear friend." "Arthur Pendleton," the usher scanned his list. "Pendleton, I don't see that name here, sir. The reserved sections A through D are strictly for immediate family, current Joint Chiefs, Cabinet Secretaries, and foreign dignitaries." He gestured vaguely toward a side entrance. Perhaps the public overflow seating in the north transept would be more appropriate, though I believe that's already quite full. The implication was clear. Arthur didn't belong with the important people. His grief, his connection, was deemed insufficient. "But, General Harrison," Arthur began, his voice faltering slightly. "We served together for decades. He would want me here." The usher's polite smile didn't reach his eyes. "Sir, I'm sure the General had many acquaintances. Unfortunately, without your name on the official protocol list for the main chapel, I simply cannot allow you entry into this section. Security is very tight, as you can understand." He was already looking past Arthur, ready for the next, presumably more legitimate guest. Another older protocol officer, noticing the slight holdup, glided over. "Is there an issue, Charles?" The usher quickly explained the situation, emphasizing Arthur's lack of invitation and his name not being on the list. The senior officer gave Arthur a similar appraising, dismissive glance. "Sir," he said, his voice smooth but unyielding, "we appreciate your desire to pay respects, but this is a state occasion with strict protocols. The family has requested privacy within the main chapel for designated attendees. The north transept is available for general mourners, or you can watch the service broadcast on the screens outside in the courtyard." His tone was final. There would be no appeal. Arthur felt a cold knot of grief and frustration tighten in his chest. He wasn't asking for a place of honor, just a quiet corner to mourn his friend, to be present as he was laid to rest. To be turned away like this, based on a list, on the cut of his suit, felt like a profound betrayal of the bond he and Mike Harrison had shared. He clutched the white rose, its petals now seeming to mock him. He wouldn't beg. He wouldn't cause a scene at Mike's funeral. With a quiet nod that conveyed none of the turmoil inside, he turned away from the chapel entrance, the sounds of the organ prelude and the hushed murmurs of the important guests fading behind. Him. He found an empty stone bench in a quiet, sun-dappled corner of the cathedral courtyard overlooking a small memorial garden. He sat down heavily, the white rose resting in his lap, a solitary mourner excluded from the official rites. As Arthur sat there, lost in memories of distant battlefields and quiet evenings spent with Mike discussing everything and nothing, he was unaware of a small, almost imperceptible chain of events unfolding. A retired command sergeant major who had served as General Harrison's longtime aide and knew Arthur well from those years, had been standing near the chapel entrance. He had witnessed the quiet, firm dismissal of the old man with the white rose. He recognized Arthur instantly, despite the passage of years. He also knew with absolute certainty that General Harrison would have moved heaven and earth to ensure Arthur Pendleton had a place of honor at his funeral. Excusing himself quietly, the sergeant major made a discreet but urgent call on his cell phone. The call went to the current aide-de-camp of General Alistair Finch, a different man from the Aus museum story. This one, a currently serving, highly respected four-star Army general, a protege and close confidant of the late General Harrison, and the officer scheduled to deliver the primary eulogy. The message relayed was brief, concise, and explosive. Arthur Pendleton, Harrison's oldest comrade, is being denied entry to the chapel. Currently sitting on a bench in the courtyard. Situation critical. Reference General Harrison's known wishes. The aide, understanding the monumental protocol failure this represented, didn't hesitate. He immediately, and with considerable urgency, relayed the information to General Finch, who was in the vestry preparing for the service. General Finch listened, his face growing visibly darker with each word. He glanced at his watch. The service was due to begin in less than 5 minutes. He made a swift, decisive gesture to his aide. "Get him, now, and get me a live microphone. Main chapel PA system, immediately." Inside the packed chapel, the organ music swelled to a crescendo, then softened, signaling the imminent start of the service. A hush fell over the assembled dignitaries, the rows of decorated officers, the grieving family. The presiding chaplain approached the pulpit, but before he could speak, the chapel's PA system, usually reserved for scripture readings and formal announcements, crackled to life with an unexpected authoritative voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, family of General Harrison, your attention, please. This is General Alistair Finch." A ripple of surprise and confusion went through the congregation. General Finch was scheduled to speak later for the eulogy. Why was he on the PA now? "There has been a significant oversight," General Finch's voice continued, calm but with an undercurrent of profound displeasure that made everyone sit up straighter. "It has just come to my attention that one of General Harrison's oldest, dearest friends, and one of this nation's quietest, most dedicated heroes, Mr. Arthur Pendleton, has been mistakenly denied entry to this chapel and is currently sitting alone in the courtyard." Gasps and murmurs filled the chapel. The protocol officers looked horrified. The Harrison family exchanged bewildered, distressed glances. "Mr. Pendleton," the general's voice continued, now imbued with a deep personal awe. Respect served alongside General Harrison from their earliest days as young officers. His contributions to this nation's security, though largely unheralded due to their sensitive nature, were instrumental in countless successful operations and saved innumerable American lives. General Harrison himself often stated that Arthur Pendleton was the bravest, most resourceful man he ever had the honor to serve with. To deny such a man a place among us today at this solemn occasion is not just a protocol error. It is an insult to General Harrison's memory and to the very principles of loyalty and brotherhood he embodied. The silence in the chapel was, now absolute, broken only by the general's resonant voice. "Therefore, this service will be delayed for a few moments. I have dispatched my aide to locate Mr. Pendleton and escort him in here, and he will not be seated in some overflow section. He will be seated here in the front row, alongside the family and the Joint Chiefs, in the place of honor he so profoundly deserves. We will wait." The PA system clicked off, leaving an echoing silence filled with stunned disbelief and a dawning sense of shame among those responsible for the guest list. Outside, Arthur Pendleton looked up in astonishment as a young ramrod-straight Army captain, clearly General Finch's aide, hurried toward him, his expression a mixture of apology and extreme deference. "Mr. Pendleton, sir, General Finch sends his deepest apologies for the oversight. He requests your immediate presence in the chapel. Please, allow me to escort you." Arthur, bewildered but recognizing the unmistakable ring of genuine military authority, allowed himself to be gently guided towards the chapel entrance. The ushers who had denied him entry moments before now stood aside, their faces pale, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe, as Arthur, flanked by the captain, was led into the packed chapel. The entire congregation, as if on an unspoken signal, initiated by General Finch, who had now taken a prominent position near the front, began to rise to their feet, not just the military personnel, but the senators, the ambassadors, the cabinet secretaries, the grieving family, everyone. They stood in silent, profound respect, as Arthur Pendleton, the quiet man with the white rose in the old suit, was escorted to a specially cleared seat in the very front pew. He sat, the white rose placed gently beside him, overwhelmed, tears finally tracing paths down his weathered cheeks, not tears of sorrow now, but of a deep, unexpected, and profoundly moving acknowledgment. General Finch then took the pulpit, not to deliver his prepared eulogy yet, but to speak briefly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his gaze sweeping the room, "today we mourn a great soldier, General Mike Harrison. But today we also have the honor of recognizing another great, albeit unsung, hero among us, his brother-in-arms, Arthur Pendleton. Let his presence here remind us that true honor is not always loud, and true friendship transcends all lists and protocols. The service for General Harrison will now begin, enriched by the presence of one of his truest comrades." The funeral service proceeded, imbued with a new layer of poignancy and meaning. Arthur sat quietly, listening to the tributes, his heart full. He had come to say goodbye to a friend, and had unexpectedly been seen, truly seen, for the first time in decades. After the service, General Finch personally ensured Arthur was included in the private family committal. He introduced Arthur to General Harrison's children and grandchildren, sharing quiet stories of their father's and grandfather's early days, stories only Arthur could tell. The young usher, Charles, and his senior protocol officer, both, sought Arthur out to offer their deepest, most heartfelt apologies, which Arthur accepted with quiet grace. He held no malice, only a weary understanding of how systems, and sometimes people, can fail. The incident at General Harrison's funeral became a quiet legend within certain military and governmental circles, a potent lesson in the importance of looking beyond the surface, of recognizing true worth even when it's unadorned, and of the enduring power of battlefield brotherhood. The Protocol Office at the National Cathedral reportedly underwent a significant review of its procedures. Arthur Pendleton returned to his small apartment, his quiet life. But something had shifted within him. The gnawing sense of invisibility had lessened. He had been seen. He had been honored. His friend Mike would have wanted it that way. And sometimes, a 4-star general taking over a PA system is exactly what's needed to ensure that the quiet heroes finally get their due, reminding everyone that the most important names are not always on the list, but are forever etched in the annals of shared sacrifice and unwavering loyalty. Subscribe to Hidden Sparks if you believe that true honor is recognized by the heart, not by a seating chart, and that the bonds forged in service are eternal.